Welcome to The Whole Pineapple. I'm Ruby Boris.
And I'm Ann Judge. The Whole Pineapple is a podcast about wellness focused around fertility. And on these weekly mini episodes, we bring you bite-sized ideas for you to snack on.
Like breathing exercises, book reviews. Maybe we'll review some scientific research, or we'll share some wellness and fertility stories from our listeners.
So if you're looking for a tip or a trick related to your fertility and well-being, then you've come to the right place.
Let's dig in.
Well, welcome back to The Whole Pineapple, another short snack edition that is one of our mindful moments with Jamie. I am so happy. I can't believe we're getting close to the end of doing this for a year together now. Welcome back to The Whole Pineapple, Jamie Mammenga, our wonderful counselor to help us deal with, so many stresses as we head sometimes into the holiday season.
Thank you so much for having me again. I always love being on here. It's so great. I can't believe it's been almost a year.
And we continue to get a lot of good feedback from your episodes, Jamie. So that's the thing. If we have any new listeners, Jamie has been back with us since, I believe, episode 3. I don't know. You were one of the very early episodes. So if people enjoyed this one, go back. This is not like a sitcom where you're going to have to listen in order to understand what's going on. You could go back and listen to the one on dealing with needles or listen to the one on nature. I mean, there's a lot of stuff to pick and choose from if you are enjoying any of these mindful moment episodes. So, Jamie, what are we going to talk about today?
Well, so today, obviously we're heading into the holidays, and that can be a really challenging time for people. I think sometimes it can engender feelings of joy and excitement and togetherness, and I think sometimes it can bring up feelings of stress, anxiety, obligation, overwhelm, grief, dread, even for some.
When we were talking a little bit before we started recording, I feel like especially sort of this year, I know things have been different in different parts of the country, but at least where we are, I feel like this is the first year that almost everybody that I know has plans. Last year, a lot of people were still maybe cocooning a little bit more. And now, especially if you're going and going to be with relatives that maybe you haven't been around in a while, sometimes that can be hard because everyone wants to catch up. What's been going on the last couple of years? And sometimes that can just, even anticipating questions, even if questions never actually happen, that anticipation of the visit can make the whole thing not as joyful as it should be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, I don't know about you guys, but COVID put me out of practice of how to have small talk with people and just sort of interact more naturally. And so I think sometimes that can add to it too. But absolutely, I think that this, just adds some additional layers to holiday season for people that may be challenging.
Yeah, I think it was interesting early in the pandemic how I did feel for some infertility patients that had been one sort of unexpected pleasure is the ability to cancel all these events without having to give any explanation and just well, we're just going to stay home this year. We're just not going to do it. And so now, like you said, I agree. I think I'm out of practice too. I just came back from this big fertility conference. And it was interesting when we were sitting around and talking, all of a sudden we started talking about really serious things. I think we had all lost our ability to just talk about movies. We were like, oh, well, this is what happened to me last year. And it became these serious conversations with people that I didn't even know well. So I think everybody's a little out of practice, which can sometimes lead to some good interactions. But
yeah, it can. It can be really authentic and lovely to connect with people at that deeper level too. But I also think that one thing I'm noticing, and I think this is true in my life too, that there's also just a lot going on. I feel like this last year, last few years for sure, but the last year, I feel like a lot of people have been experiencing a tremendous amount of change, or there's just been a lot going on for people in general. It seems like everybody I talk to has just been sort of going through it.
So what do you tell people who are maybe feeling a little bit of that dread when it comes to holidays and gathering, whether it's gathering with family or friends or just people that you maybe have not had to catch up with as much recently?
I think that making sure you're still taking care of you. And I also want to acknowledge that for some people who are going through infertility, some people might still have to say no to certain things because, they're at risk of still having a cycle canceled or something if they, do test positive for COVID. And so, I think that can be a challenge when people around them are still gathering and everybody's excited about that. And they may want to do those things and may be unable to. So I think there's that layer too. But I think making sure you take care of yourself, that you're finding ways to kind of relieve your stress. And I think boundaries, the word that continuously comes up for me is boundaries.
Do you advise people kind of say they are going to a family gathering? I mean, I've read sometimes it can be helpful to lay out boundaries in advance, just so you don't feel like you're not going to be like ambushed by a conversation. I mean, how do you advise people if they are like, I really don't want people to be asking me about what's going on with my fertility?
Yeah, I think people are really afraid to have that conversation, and it can feel like having all these like landmines that are out there, and those landmines can really cause people to isolate in this journey, which is sort of the last thing that you really need, because I think when you're in this journey, you actually really need support from people that you love. But it's having the right kind of support and support that actually feels good for you. And so people can be really afraid to set those boundaries. But here's what I like to remind everyone is that the people who love you, they actually genuinely want to help. They want to support you. They just really don't know how, because they don't really understand the complexities of this journey. And so sometimes actually having proactive communication and kind of setting those boundaries of like, what's going to be most helpful for me? How can we best support one another during this time? Like, you might have stuff going on too, right? Um, you know, just sometimes that kind of proactive boundary setting and communication can actually be protective of relationships, because otherwise people go in there with a lot of anxiety. They can end up coming out with a lot of resentment and hurt feelings. And other people may want to help you and support you, but they don't know how. And they feel kind of like powerless and like they're saying the wrong thing. And, there's just a lot of, unsaid feelings that end up happening. And that causes, again, people to isolate more. Or for other people to kind of back away and not maybe provide the support that you actually need and want. And so sometimes giving them the words that you need, like what's actually going to feel good for you to hear. And I think sometimes you can do this in really gentle ways, right? Where you can say something like, oh gosh, you know what? There's just all these things that people say in fertility journeys that, I think it's really common.
Mm-hmm.
There's articles about it everywhere.
Yeah.
That makes sense. That makes sense that people say those things. But, in my case, this is what actually maybe feels better when people say this to me. Like, and maybe that's just like, gosh, this sounds really hard, or how can I support you? Or, whatever the words are that feel right for you. Or if you just simply don't want to talk about it at all, kind of letting them know, like, this is sort of a tender moment for me right now. And, I would love it if maybe I could be in charge of bringing this up if it's something that feels comfortable to talk about. And otherwise, just knowing that you really care and that you're thinking about me is really helpful. But when people ask me about it when I'm not expecting it, that can be really challenging for me at times and sort of put me on the spot when I'm not expecting it.
Yeah, I think some sort of acknowledgement like that is so important, because as you were describing, it's almost like you can be upset either way. Like sometimes you can be upset because people are asking you invasive questions, or sometimes you can be upset because people are just wanting to banter about the weather, and you want to be like, I had this hard thing going on. Why don't you want to even ask me about it? And they're not asking you about it because they don't want to offend you,
Right.
and they're worried. So yeah, I mean, some people obviously might have kept all this very close and no one might even know that they're going through treatment. But for a lot of people, if people are at least aware that you're quote unquote trying in any sense, whether that's just you mentioned it or your mom said that they were hoping this was the year for grandbabies, or all those things that can spread around extended family, I think there's usually some awareness out there. And so sometimes you spend every conversation like anticipating if they're going to say something bad. And so I like that acknowledgement in the beginning of just saying, like you said, what was your phrasing again? Like, this is tender for me right now? Or you said it better than I did.
I don't remember what I said, to be honest.
Oh, it was good. People can listen back. So I don't want to talk about that right now. I'll bring it up if I want to go into it. And then you can kind of deflect the conversation, but you're at least acknowledging in some way that this has been something that's been going on with you.
Yeah. And I always like to kind of acknowledge what people are trying to do and what their intention is. So like their intention is to be supportive, whether they're avoiding the conversation because they don't want to make me uncomfortable, or they're bringing it up because they want to try to support me. And so just kind of letting people know, like, oh, I'm so thankful that, that I have somebody in my life that cares so much about me that you'd be, thinking about me in this way or trying to protect me in this way or whatever it is. Because that's the root, that's their intention. And sometimes kind of like remembering what their actual intention is can be really helpful if you think it's a positive one.
That's a nice way to deflect too when people are giving you advice that you don't find helpful, just to kind of address the thought behind it. Oh, I appreciate you thinking of me, without having to be like, that thing you read on the internet's not true.
Yeah, but yeah, exactly. I mean, you're welcome to provide, education if you want to, but I also think then sometimes still setting that boundary to kind of nip that conversation in the bud, right? So like, following that up with the boundary, right? Because you've just encouraged them to hear you in a different way because you really validated them and kind of what their intention is, and that feels good. And then following that up with like, actually right now, it doesn't actually feel very good to talk about this, kind of in this setting. So, but I just love that you've been thinking about me. Thanks so much. So just, still following that up with a boundary that feels right for you.
That's great. Any other tips?
Again, just doing some self-care things because I think the holidays can be really, fast-paced sometimes, especially as people are now, maybe gathering more and fitting more things in again. I think maybe a lot of us have forgotten what that can be like to, have all of these things that we're supposed to be going to. I know that I kind of got used to having a slightly slower pace when it comes to those things. And, I'm extroverted, but I'm also rather introverted. So I forget that I recharge with that personal time. So making sure that you are still doing things to take care of yourself, whatever that is, taking some space for yourself to make sure you can recharge your energy, or getting some exercise, or, reading, or, whatever it is that feels good for you. Just make sure you're putting that into your time as well, and that it's not all kind of like give, go, go, go.
What about if you have a partner? Do you recommend having like a little code signal or word or something that means like, please take me away from this conversation, or
Absolutely.
Please let's go say we need to go walk the dog and take a break from all of this?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Having a code, a way that you can check in with one another during events so that if one of you needs to leave, if one of you is feeling triggered, you can get out of that situation. Always give yourself an out, right? Think of what your out is beforehand. Always give yourself an out. For these social situations, so that if you are not feeling emotionally safe in that moment, you can leave if you need to and take good care of yourself, and it's going to be okay. But yeah, if you have a partner, make sure you're kind of in on it together and know what that looks like and how to support one another. If you are not partnered, kind of maybe you can even set this up with a friend or somebody that you trust that might be there, or have somebody call you and be like, hey, I need you to come do this, or, or set a timer on your phone to just lift your phone up to your ear and take a pretend phone call that says, I need to go.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. Because I feel like sometimes we have so much more history with our own close friends or relatives, it can be a little easier to set boundaries, but it's hard if you're in a situation, say, with in-laws or something where, again, it's coming from a place of caring, but you might be a little bit more worried about offending people if you try and say, I really don't want to talk about this right now. But that's a situation where the person who's closer in that relationship to the person might be able to kind of disengage in a little bit better way.
You can set up some of these outs on the front end of a visit too. So you can let the host know, like, hey, there might be something that could come up in the middle of this that I might need to leave, but I'm going to stay as long as I can. I'll let you know if I need to leave or something. So they know. You don't have to tell them what that is. You can just say like, hey, there's something else happening and I might have to take off a little sooner than I want to. So you can also kind of protect yourself in that way. And that way people are anticipating it, and it's going to be easier for you to leave if you need to.
Yeah, and that's a perfect thing to mention too, because fertility treatment doesn't usually take the holidays off. So we have a lot of people that are still involved and having to make appointments to clinics or be going in. And sometimes that does mean some last minute cancellations for get-togethers. So, but just like we've talked about in episodes all year, also taking time for the things that are important for you, because sometimes it's a situation where maybe you don't do an insemination this month because you don't want to miss that gathering, and that's totally fine. And you'll do it next month. So I sometimes really like to talk with people around times like this where there's a lot of stuff going on, to let people know it's always okay to take a break from treatment. You want to, sometimes we're talking about these gatherings like they're going to make everybody feel terrible, but some people get a lot of joy and peace from being able to have that support. And then maybe you feel in a better place to try it again next month. So it's always a balance in trying to figure out what's best for you in that specific situation.
Yeah, sometimes people are feeling like their life has been on hold, right? During this journey. And so they can feel a little resentful of like, I'm having to give up on all of this stuff. I'm having to sacrifice so much of what makes me feel good or connected to do this treatment. And so, yeah, sometimes taking a break so that you can just feel like you, right? Again, for a little bit can be really meaningful and relaxing and really helpful.
All right. Well, Jamie, I'm excited to hear what you've created for us. I will go quiet and let you do your thing. We do want to end as we're getting into the end of the year, though. If you've been enjoying our episodes, please go online and give us a review. It really helps drive us up in the rankings, which makes it easier for people to find us. Thank you so much for being here with us again, Jamie.
So as we talked about today, fertility journeys can have a tendency to add some difficult layers to holiday seasons for many people. And so in today's mindful moment, we're going to engage in a practice that I hope can help shift your mindset so that you may have access to more harmony this holiday season. You know, traditions can be a really wonderful thing, and they can also be challenging, and that there's some societal expectations that can go along with that. And sometimes those can bring joy, and sometimes it can cause pretty significant stress for people. And as a result, sometimes people feel like they have to put on a happy face or a mask, or, kind of mask how they may actually be feeling internally. This is called creating a persona, or a way of, presenting yourself or expressing yourself to others around you. So that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it can be really challenging or cause some problems when it puts you in significant conflict with who you are, or how you actually feel or see yourself in that moment. And this can lead to a lot of feelings of increased anxiety, overwhelm, and depression. And this can also, during the holidays, lead to feelings of resentment and burnout when you feel like you are kind of compromising at the expense of yourself. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So for this mindful moment, I invite you to please find a quiet and comfortable space that is free from distractions. You can be seated or lie down, do whatever feels comfortable for you in this moment. When you feel ready, close your eyes and begin breathing deeply and slowly in through your nose and out through your mouth. And as you breathe, notice your body begin to settle and center itself in the here and now. Just breathing slowly and deeply and at your own pace. And after a few breaths, bring your awareness to an obligation that you may have coming up over the holiday season. Something you don't necessarily want to do, or that isn't maybe aligned with how you feel internally or what your needs are. And take a moment to identify the mask or the persona you may wear in order to fulfill this obligation. Do you find that you need to pretend to be something or someone that is not currently you? Ask yourself, what am I giving up or sacrificing if I choose to wear this persona or mask? Am I feeling aligned and in harmony with myself in this situation? And I invite you to take some more time here and really visualize yourself actually playing this role in this setting. And notice the feelings that this brings up for you. Do you feel a shift in your energy? What thoughts are you having? What emotions are you feeling? Are you reacting physically to wearing this mask? Is wearing this persona hurting you in any way? Next, ask yourself, how will I benefit if I choose to honor my needs in this situation? What might I gain and how might I feel if I choose to compromise in a way that actually includes my own needs instead of compromising in a way that negates or ignores my current needs and feelings? Now take a few moments to visualize playing this more realistic and balanced role, and notice how it makes you feel. Actually visualize this. Do you feel a shift in your energy? What thoughts are you having? What emotions are you feeling? Are you experiencing any physical reaction in your body? Is this new role helping you in any way? Now I invite you to take some time to sit with any feelings of relaxation or peacefulness that this more balanced and boundary role may bring up for you. Allow this feeling to settle into your body by taking a few more deep and slow breaths in through your nose and out through your mouth. And when you feel ready, open your eyes and rejoin your day with a greater sense of internal peace, alignment, and harmony. Namaste.